Hello, and welcome to the Loons Charge Up. All right, today is February 2nd, 2025. Today's topic is going to be dealing with conflict. The reason for this charge up, oh, I'm sorry, I did not start my spaces. Give me one moment and let me start that. And I'm going to have to start all over again. I'm sorry about that. Okay, let's start this the right way. Excuse my voice. I am having some congestion issues. Um, Welcome to the Loons Weekly Charge Up. And today's date, as I mentioned, is February 2nd, 2025. You made it through the first month of February. Congratulations. Today's topic is dealing with conflict. So this is going to be a big thing. It's an issue that I have issues with. It's a topic that I have issues with. I'm sorry. But it's something that we deal with on a daily basis. So I think it's a good thing to deal with. But what I try to do with this format with the weekly charge up is I like to recap on the issue that we discussed last week, not last year, last week. Okay, so welcome to the second month of the year. And last week we talked about detoxing, not detoxing in a physical form, but detoxing in a manner of getting rid of people, places, and things, changing our way of living, improving our life by detoxing from toxic people, places, and things. Okay. Now, I've mentioned this before. When I talk about these topics, I go through it with you during that week. And I take a mental note of certain hurdles that has to be crossed. Now, one of the hurdles that's hard to come by is that it's difficult to detox from people, places, and things because they become a habit for us. So we have to replace those things with positive reinforcement instead of dealing with the toxic people that we deal with that we've probably been dealing with for years. You have to replace that with positive people, new people, which you have to be careful of, but places where you go, where you hang out, who you choose to spend your time with, where you choose to spend your time with, what you choose to spend your time with doing. Like I said, it's a hard habit to get out of, but you have to replace it with something more positive. It's part of your growth. I had somebody who was in a bad situation a couple of years ago, maybe a decade ago. Old high school buddy of mine. I'm not going to say names. But they were in a bad place after high school. And they ended up, when we reconnected after I got out of the service, I asked them, how did they change their life around? I mean, this person was going from living from people's couch, one couch after another. And all of a sudden they were living the dream that we talked about when we were in high school. They were living the life. They had the job that we wanted, and they were engaged. They're about to have a kid. And I was like, what did you do? And he told me the most profound thing that anyone's ever told me. He said, do you know that if you choose the date of a year and you check physically your physical cellular body changes, the person you were literally the year before is not the person you were before. Your physics change. So your physical body change because it develops, it grows. So why can't your mental grow? Why can't you grow with that? Why can't you go with the flow? Your body changes to adapt, which to me, I thought about it. I was like, he said, you're not the same person you were a year ago. Every cell in your body changes. Wow. So your detox process, it takes a while. You're going to hit resistance. Just like when you were setting up your boundaries, you had set up resistance. Trust me, I know this. I went through that. The boundaries is the episode before. So that was episode 6. That was episode 5. So if you want to go back, you could go ahead and check that. But this is just a week. Just a week. You see the changes. When it comes to detoxing from people, places, and things, you're going to get resistance. But the resistance is not within you. Remember that. It's from external forces. People who get you into bad habits, people who are not good for you, want you to stay with you. I call it the crab in the bucket effect. And for those of you who don't understand, if you put crabs in a bucket, the crabs will always try to get out of the bucket. But once one crab reached the top of that bucket, and if you notice, most crabs you never have an issue with crabs leaving a bucket if you put them in a bucket. It's because once you have that one crab that reached the top, the other crabs on the bottom grabs them and pulls them back down. Don't be that crab. Don't be that crab. Kick them up. I'm sorry. I try not to swear on this, despite the fact that I have this as an adult rating, but kick those mofos off your leg and get out of that bucket. Our purpose in life is to grow. So, which brings me right into today's topic. Today's topic is dealing with conflict. No one goes through a day. You do not go through a 24-hour period without having some type of conflict. Now, how you react to the conflict is how you deal and how you grow. Some people run. Some people just don't deal with it and just let it lie. But you know me, I like to define things. So let's define what the word conflict is. According to my research, conflict is a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one. Okay, that's one definition of conflict. Another definition of conflict is being incompatible or at variance, a clash. Personality conflicts. Just plain disagreement on how things could be. Now, how do you deal? I mean, some people could deal with conflict better than others. Most people like to deal, and this is the way to deal with. Most people like to either deal with conflict by avoiding it altogether, which I'm sorry, you can't run away from life. And that's what it is running away from life. Um, or some people hits it head on, but in the most aggressive and most destructive process. So for your peace, for your growth, let's take a look and see some effective ways, non-aggressive ways to deal with conflict. Now, one of the ones is the one I like the best, which is one that everybody has the biggest problem with, is active listening. What is active listening? It's actually listening to the person instead of listening to respond. Listen to their side. Be fair. Yes, you are in the middle of the conflict and you are one of the angles of the conflict. But you can still listen to the other person's argument impartially. You never know. It might be a learning experience for you. It might be a learning experience for them. But listen, absorb, take in their side of the story, their point of view. We have a bad habit in this day and age of not understanding someone else's point of view. Someone else's point of view might actually enlighten you and help you grow. And that's what this journey is all about. It's about growing and learning. Open communication. We have a bad habit of holding everything inside, having resentment, where resentment is really 9 times out of 10 is not really supposed to be there. I mean, the reason why the person is having a conflict with you may have nothing to do with you. And maybe talking it out helps you realize, or them, that this issue is not really an issue. This conflict is not really in a conflict. It's a projection issue. And again, it's a learning experience. Now, that actually leads to the next way of is identifying the source of the conflict. There's a saying that says, be kind to everybody. Try to be understanding because you never know what someone else is going through. Best example, some people don't like to tell people what they're going through in their lives. Some people don't share their hardships. Just because they don't share it doesn't mean they don't go through it. And some people don't know how to deal with it. So the way they deal with it is projecting. Maybe the conflict you're dealing with or going to deal with or have dealt with in the past has nothing to do with what the cause is, what the problem is. And that's maybe identifying that helps you because it could be you. I'm not saying that it's always the other person. Never think the conflict is due to another person's action. You always have to ask yourself, what is my part in this? It could make you realize what the source of the issue is, or it can help the other person realize what the source of the issue is. Now, most of the time, it's our conflicts is due to, I'm going to stay in the workplace because the workplace is less personal. It's less personal to be, it's easier to deal with. When you start dealing with family or relationship issues, that's a little bit more complicated. So let's deal with workplace issues, which it's easier to find a common ground, a compromise, compromising when necessary. You're not always right. They're not always right. We are human beings. People tend to forget that. People make mistakes, people make assumptions. But when you talk it out and you seek that common ground, it helps resolve the issue a little bit quicker. Now, that means you have to be honest with yourself and with the other party and all parties involved. It's an honesty, it's a mindfulness that really takes hold, which actually brings up, don't personally attack people. Whether this is an issue with someone you at one time was a confidant for or was a confidant for you, attacking them personally does nothing but aggravate the situation. So avoid personal attacks on other people. What you assume, what you may know, it's it's crossing a boundary and it's being toxic. So, and the last thing, which is an effective method of dealing with conflict, is always try to remain calm and objective. Like I said, we're human. We are emotional beings. Trust me. If there's anybody who knows about being an emotional being, it's me. But not every issue, not every topic has to be approached in an aggressive manner. Now, I'm going to hit some, I did my research, so I'm reading my notes. And this falls under key strategies to manage conflict. It repeats one other thing: active listening. This is the one thing we do not do. We do not actually listen to the person who's speaking. You listen to react. That's what we all do as a default. I hate to say it, but that's what it is. We do that as a default. So let's try to listen, truly listen to the other party. You may not agree, but if you listen, you could find that common ground. You might even learn something. You might even grow. Okay. Um, Another thing to manage it is, I love this one. It says focus on the issue, not the person. That is being objective. We have personality issues, personality conflicts, cultural conflicts, but when it comes down to, and when it comes down to any conflict you deal with, it's an issue, not a person. For example, DMV. I'm going to go there. DMV is the place most people have the most conflict. I don't understand why that person couldn't just do this. Well, the reason why the person couldn't just do this is that they got rules that they have to follow. They have procedures they have to follow. Now, the person could be of a different religious sex, culture. That has nothing to do with it. They have their policies to follow. You want them to cut the corners, it's a conflict. It's not about the person, it's about the issue. And that's the one thing when you're dealing with a conflict that you have to understand. Okay. Now, this is the best thing on managing the conflict. You could ask questions. Ask really clarifying questions. Questions that you are having issues with how things are going. That helps you understand why they're coming at you at this angle, why they're coming at you with this issue. Now, it's okay to validate and express your feelings in the situation if it falls into it. I feel this way. This makes me feel this way. One of the things whenever I have conflicts is that I always express that, and I'm immediately told, and I have to step back. You're taking it too personal. It's not a personal attack. And that's where conflict comes. Conflict comes, especially in the workplace, when people think it's a personal attack, and it's not. And that's where you have to listen and you have to ask those questions. But why is it this way? Why is it XYZ? And you realize it's not due to whatever personal reason you think it is. It's because it's policy. It's because this is how I know how to do it. Well, is there another way to do it? Oh my goodness, we hit a compromise. Um, which actually goes into identifying the common ground and also coming to brainstorming solutions together. Every conflict can be resolved as long as both parties are willing to follow and compromise. And oh my goodness, one of the major conflict. You're gonna have to go back to episode 5. Yeah, this is episode 7. Yeah, you're gonna have to go back to episode 5 because it said set boundaries. Setting boundaries actually help with dealing with conflicts because then you understand this is my personal boundaries, but yet this is my professional boundaries. When you have a conflict and it's due to regulations, it is a boundary preset by the organization or company you work for or whatever you're dealing with. And sometimes when discussing or facing such conflicts, you may have to say, I need 5 minutes. For me, it's that bad habit I have is smoking. I'm like, okay, I need to go out for a cigarette. I need to take a break and regroup myself and understand my role in this conflict and how it could be resolved. Because you always want to resolve a conflict. Now, I'm going to touch on some different conflict resolution styles. Collaborating. We are humans. We are meant to work together. There is no such thing as a lone wolf. We are not wolves. I know people like to say that, but we are not wolves. We are mankind. We are human beings, and human beings, we work better by working together. I don't care if you are off the grid. if you are someone who likes to be an introvert, you have to have you need human interaction. At one point, you are collaborating. Whether you are stuck in your house and you rely on um, Amazon, Instacart, Uber Eats, whatever you do not to have human contact, guess what? You are collaborating with human beings. Accept that. So collaborating with others is key. I don't care if you like the person who they are. That has nothing to do with it. You have a goal. And you need to set your ego aside because that's what that is. That is the ego. Maybe I should do that next week, talking about the ego and how the ego falls into difficulties. But you have to set your ego aside and collaborate with people. Sometimes you have to be accommodating, compromising. You have to be competent. Stay true to your word. And if you're in such a hostile situation, which I have been before, you may need to avoid certain people, depending if you can. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. I already hit compromising and compromising the situation. So that was my notes. Let's talk. Let's really talk about dealing with conflict. Conflict is nothing but a disagreement. Oh, what's a disagreement? A different point of view. We like to believe that we are always right. We know everything. Even in this late age of 51, I like to believe that I know everything. We don't. And when we meet someone or a situation that does not meet our expectation or meet or agree or validate our point of view, it's a conflict. Now, this topic hits a little bit it doesn't hit just work. Here goes the thing. And I don't get political on this. I try not to get political on this channel. As you can see, when me and Luke when we have our conversations, one of the things I keep reminding him when we sit down and talk is please don't get political. But I do have to get a little political on this. The state of our government is due to the issue of not being able to resolve conflict and not following the steps that I mentioned before. We don't want conflict. We want an easy life. As much as difficult it is. I mean, down to paying bills, dealing with debt, dealing with work hours, dealing with pay. Everything's a conflict. but it's how you handle it. You could cause it to give you high blood pressure. You could allow it to interfere with your daily life, and it doesn't have to. Just put it this way. I move through life when I wake up every morning and and I know conflict is going to happen, whether it's um, a disagreement with someone I ride the train with every day, a disagreement with someone I meet for just a few seconds or a few minutes. It's going to hit. It's going to be a different point of view. How you allow that to affect you and how you handle it is ever so important. Your approach is on you. You can't control the other party. You can't even control the situation. And once you're like, okay, this is something I didn't expect, or this is a conflict I don't want to go through, how am I going to deal with it? You are your own problem solver. A conflict is a problem that needs to be solved in a mature, effective, non aggressive way. So this week, let's take a look. You went through the boundaries, your boundaries are set, you're still working on that. That's something you work on every day, your boundaries. You're removing toxic elements from your life. The most beautiful thing you could do. You're helping yourself grow. You're going to hit conflicts because most people don't want you to set your boundaries. How do you set that? I understand how you feel. The person you're used to dealing with is not the person you're going to be dealing with now because this is how I set my boundary. Now, do you need to compromise on that? Don't push your boundaries back. But at the same time, say, listen, I understand this is what you're used to, but this is how we're doing things. Can we come to a compromise? Removing detox thing. I'm sorry, that's an absolute. I don't want to follow this behavior. I want to improve who I am. I want to be an adult. I want to be responsible. You've been dealing with conflicts the moment you started down this trail. The moment, if you're following my book, Vista Within, the moment you decided to follow that book and start to validate yourself, conflict started. Conflict started within yourself. To tell you the truth, how did you talk yourself through that? How did you deal with that? How did you tell yourself this is a better me? This is for my benefit. This is for the benefit of XYZ. Conflicts happen on a daily basis. Honesty with oneself. Maybe I should do another episode on that. But this week we're going to dealing with conflicts, dealing with misunderstandings, dealing with different perspectives, because that's what conflict is. It's a different perspective on things. I remember I had a job one time where most of my job is IT. I'm old school, and there were certain things that I do a certain way. And I had a young guy, quite intelligent, had a nice future, but he felt it should be done this way. And he happened to be above me, despite the fact of his age. I don't have an issue with that. You do you, boo. Um, you climb that ladder, you be ambitious. But he was like, you have to do it this way. Now, those who deal with technology understands, those who deal with life, Generation X and older understand there's more than one way to skin a cat. No, I'm not saying that you skin cats, but that's a saying. And so you have to be open to different ways of doing things. And sometimes maybe the conflict is due to the fact that the other party doesn't understand that there's multiple ways of doing things. They could be a micromanaging mindset. Um, this is where you have to have open dialogue in a conflict. I have an issue because of XYZ. We need to resolve it. And here are the possible solutions to the issue. So, how do you handle your conflicts? How do you conflict? How has it worked for you throughout life? My way of dealing with conflict up until recently was avoidance. It does nothing. I don't know the other side. I don't understand that point of view because I run away. You don't grow through that. So if you're having a conflict, if you have an issue, I would suggest sitting down with the other party, actually hearing and listening to the other party. And then at the same time, explaining your side of the story and saying, hey, maybe we could do X, Y, Z. I mentally live in a world where compromise is always a way of going through things. Yes, I have been told, and I still live through this way, that I live through a world through rose-colored glasses. But conflicts do occur, and compromise must be met. Whether it's a family conflict, whether it's a professional conflict, whether it's a personal conflict. So this week, we're going to deal with conflict in a non-aggressive area, a non-aggressive way. That is what that's your goal. Have your voice be heard. Listen to the other voice that's being spoken to you and find your middle ground. I know it's a tough one. This is a tough week. This is going to be a tough one for you. But I tell you what, it's going to be a rewarding one. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first, but everything worthwhile is not comfortable. When I was young, I used to hate getting my hair permed. You can't tell because I went natural and I went with the locks. And I remember my aunt, the only person who could do magic for my hair, always telling me no pain, no gain. I had to go through the burn to have that straight and nice hair that I wanted at the time. Well, my mom wanted, I didn't want, but that's another discussion. But you have to sit there and you have to look at every option. But you don't know the options if you don't open that dialogue. Conflict is an opportunity for learning and realizing and seeing the other options, the other doors that may be open. or at least sharing your viewpoint and giving you a voice. So, this week, don't look at any conflicts that you hit that come arise as something negative. Look at the conflict as an opportunity for you and an opportunity for the opposing person, group, issue. There's a solution to everything. There's a saying for those who follow the holistic way. For every ailment, there is something in nature that is a solution. For every conflict, there's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to share your voice, and an opportunity to see another option. Keep this in mind. This is going to be a short one. Keep this in mind as you go through your week. And with every conflict, no matter how big, no matter how small, take a step back and view the situation and see if you can resolve it. Some takes longer than others, but there's always a resolution, there's always a compromise, and there's always room for growth. So I ask that you have a beautiful week, an enlightening week, and that you keep growing with these charge ups. This is the Loon, aka Judith Swanson, saying I will see you next week. Next week we have a treat. I believe we will be doing the Loon and Luke show. So keep an eye out for a live possibly next Saturday. And I will have the weekly charge up on Sunday like I normally do, because I think it's important for us to be reminded of our potential to grow, and our potential to be a positive influence by our personal growth within humanity and society. Till next week.